Hi, Dr. Karen Can here. I am the founder of the Academy of Light Medicine and the Topican Healing Method. In this series called Healing Myths, Mistakes, and Misconceptions, I'm going to go through some topics that I see a lot in my healing practice and in my school. So, this topic today is about why clearing isn't enough. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I see a lot of people that have come to me and over the years have done a lot of clearing work. And to their benefit, I mean, they have cleared so many amazing things, including negative emotions, negative beliefs, curses, vows, entities, toxins, physical and non physical. And they've done so much work in that place. And yet they feel like, hey, how come it's not enough? Like, how come I'm still symptomatic? So I like to explain things this way. Clearing work is very, very important for sure. But healing may include clearing, but may not only be clearing. In other words, healing is like a bigger container, and clearing is one aspect of healing. Now, I know there are some amazing protocols out there and modalities out there that focus on clearing. And the idea is if you clear what's negative out of your field, out of your body, then the body can just reboot itself and automatically self-heal and get back to normal. And that is true for a lot of people. But I've also found that it is not true for everyone. Why? Well, when you're clearing, you're really focusing on getting rid of negative low vibrational energy. However, for full healing, some people need to be reconnected, connected, or have with them the positomorphic field or blueprint of something positive. In other words, there are people running around that don't have positive blueprints for things in their energy field that they really need to have full 360-degree spectrum health. So instead of just focusing on clearing, you may want to check in to see if you're one of those folks that needs to understand that there's positive energy you need as well. I'll give you a concrete example. So I've had people in my healing practice and students who, for example, have depression or a mood issue. And they've done lots of clearing, they've cleared entities, they've cleared negative thoughts, they've cleared negative emotions, multiple timelines, that kind of thing. But yet they're still not happy. They still kind of like blah, you know? And in some of these cases, what we found is that they're actually not connected to the blueprint. I call it the positomorphic field, and that's from Rupert Sheldrake's work. He actually coined the term morphogenetic or morphogenic fields. And so think of it as a positive blueprint. So they're not connected to the positive blueprint of joy. It's like it's not in their field. So how can they experience joy when there is no blueprint for joy? And so what we've done is we've downloaded that positomorphic field of joy. And then they're like, OMG, I feel different, right? They cleared and cleared and cleared all this stuff, but they didn't have the positomorphic field for joy. And there are a lot of positomorphic fields. In fact, in my Topican level 1 training, we give you examples in a whole, cheat sheet, if you will, of positomorphic fields that may be useful and maybe downloadable for you if it's for the highest good. I'll give you another example. So I had a Facebook follower who ended up in the ICU with some sort of illness, and his oxygen saturations were really low in the 60s. What does that mean? Well, it means that he can't deliver oxygen to his cells. So literally his cells were starving of oxygen. And it's a very, very severe and serious condition. So people will give oxygen to the person, and yet he was not getting that much better at the point that I found out about it. And so I tuned in and did Topican healing, just like a mini healing, and found that he was disconnected from the positomorphic field of oxygen and oxygenation. Now, this is more common than you think. Why? Well, it's really interesting because the amount of oxygen on Earth has actually changed over time. And some people have not caught up with that change. In other words, things have evolved and their bodies and their energy systems have not evolved with it. So there is a more evolved version, if you will, or blueprint of oxygen that's available to us that may be not available a year ago or a month ago or a week ago. In other words, it can continue to evolve. So we want to connect to the most evolved positomorphic fields. So in this case, I downloaded and activated this for him, and his oxygen saturations the next day went to the 90s, and then he was able to leave the ICU shortly thereafter. So that's how important positomorphic fields are. So however you are doing healing for yourself, if you've just been focusing on clearing, I want you to think about, wow, maybe there's a positomorphic field that I also need or could use. I'll give you another example. There are people that I work with who I call light being starseeds. In other words, they were pure light beings without a body in other timelines. They've come here incarnated into a physical human 3D body in order to help out, in order to experience this time, in order to evolve. And when that happens, they have their memories erased about who they really are. So some of them just don't remember that they're these beautiful, high vibrational light beings that came from places that were only love and light. Let's put it that way. There was no evil, there was no murder, there was no nothing that like that, low vibrational. So what happens is if they're born into this human body and they forget who they are, and they don't have parents necessarily who know how to counsel them, coach them, test them for who they are, then they can live a lot of their adult lives really feeling lonely and isolated. Because remember, they were from a contingent where everything was love and light, and they were all one. There were no need for boundaries in that space. But here they are in a physical human body, cut off, literally cut off, because there's a boundary, from everyone else. And even though they have loving family members and friends, they never feel like they belong, and they never feel like being here. Like they can feel so isolated and lonely, like longing for that feeling of feeling connected like they used to as a light being. They just don't realize as a human that that is not a natural thing. But here's the thing, we can actually download the positomorphic field of the memory of what it felt like to be all in one, to have that love, to have that connection with their tribe. And we can download it to them while they're still embodied in a human, and all of a sudden they feel different and they feel connected. They no longer feel isolated and separate. And there's all sorts of things that can happen after that. I've had quite a few light being starseeds in a one-on-one session with me in the past just burst into tears because they just felt so different, and they finally felt understood, that they never felt like they belonged. And some of them even want to leave, like literally be disembodied, if you will. Like it's not like they're actively trying to kill themselves or be suicidal, but they just don't feel happy here. And then once we download that positomorphic field, now they feel connected, and now they can do their mission here on Earth. So this positomorphic field, for example, is so important. We actually included it in the Topican healing method in our guide 2, which is actually some of the most common positomorphic fields that people can use to download. And there are countless, right? But the guide 2 is part of the level 1 training program, and it just shows people the mechanics of how to download positomorphic fields. So in case you've been doing a lot of clearing and not realizing that there may be something positive you need to download, think about that, right? And then the third piece is, well, what else would be considered healing if it's not taking away something negative, not downloading something positive? Well, the third piece is awareness. And that awareness is sometimes you need to know, understand, process, evolve, or create something in order for you to experience quote unquote healing in 360 degrees of healing, okay? Holistic healing. So sometimes you need to know more information. And with some healing modalities, that is very limited. And if you have a way to discern, like, okay, what percentage is the negative energy I need to delete? What percentage is the positive energy I need to download? And what percentage is something else I need to know, right? Then you'll have an idea of, for your complete healing, at least on the day that you're testing, what else there is. Because I see a lot of people, they come to me and they've done tons of clearing, and when I test them, we have a special protocol for that called the 7-point abundance assessment. When I test them, they may have like 10% left to heal of negative energy for that day, like that. And a lot of people, if I've never worked with them, if they've never had healing work, that's usually like 40, 50, 60% is negative energy that wants to heal, you know? But for these folks that have done so much clearing over the years, it's very small, like 10%, 5%, 8%. So they've done tons of clearing. And then when I check how many, you know, what percentage is positive energies they need, that's much higher. So that might be 40%, right? And the rest could be other things they need to know and understand to evolve, that kind of thing. So it's really helpful to have some sort of system to figure these things out if you're the kind of person that has a high spiritual responsibility and that you need to know. Because some people don't need to know. You know, they don't have as high spiritual responsibilities. They're not healing on behalf of a tribe, a country, the planet, the universe, you know, star contingents of people. So because they have lesser, if you will, responsibility in this lifetime, sometimes they don't really need to know, you know, extra stuff. But for people that have high spiritual responsibility, and usually they have more difficult and challenging issues that nobody can figure out, hint, hint, they do need to know. So it's very helpful to have a way of discerning that as well. What I'd love for you to do is post in the comments. Let me know, you know, how have you been doing your own personal healing? Have you been mostly working on clearing? Have you been downloading positomorphic fields? What way do you have to discern what else you need to know? Would love to know how you're doing that, what system you're using for that, and so we can all learn from each other. So go ahead and post in the comment. And then, you know, if you've just been clearing, or this is brand new to you, these concepts, you know, post in the comments then, like, what's your number one takeaway for today? Like, what did you learn today from this video that you didn't know before? So I'd love to hear from you and post in the comments below. And, you know, I'm going to have a workshop coming up soon, an interactive workshop where we're going to go deeper into these concepts and actually going to show you the mechanics, if you will, of how to do the clearings, how to do the downloads, and how to find out more information. So if you're interested in that, I will post that link close to this video so you can check it out. And thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to the next series of videos on healing myths, mistakes, and misconceptions. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.